Thank you very much, and apologies for bursting in through late through the door. I hate going as a second speaker because Patrick has just stolen all my lines. In fact, I actually wrote the speech for him. He memorised so well. Well done, Patrick. We'll tell you much more about this topic in greater detail and expertise, I think, than I could possibly do. So I'll only speak really for a few minutes. And I was thinking before I came here, intersectional identity, it's not really the sexiest term you come across every day in your life. But having said that, it's nonetheless a very topical, extremely interesting once you start to explore the variants and the different issues that are involved. And so identity is a subject that for me has always fascinated me, always has. And maybe that goes as a function of being brought up as a Pakistani, Glaswegian, Muslim, Scottish type of person. You've got all these already multifaceted identities. And actually that's at the nub of what I think we'll be talking a lot about. Identity is a lot more fluid and unrestricted than it perhaps has been, or certainly is recognised to be more fluid and unrestricted. Even within particular identity characteristics, now you have so many variations. And again, looking at my own example, looking at my own perhaps racial identity, where I am, and I suppose race is where I have a kind of strong suit. It's an issue that I've always explored in my time as a community activist, and I think to myself, okay, well, where is my own example? And so you've got somebody here who, born in Glasgow, born and bred, Ouija as we call it. I know some people are outside of Glasgow, but born and bred, Ouija here in Glasgow, the city of Glasgow. I've got a father from Pakistan. I've got a mother from Kenya. I've got married to a white Scottish girl who has a father from England. I've got a grandfather from Kuwait, another grandfather from India. I mean, God help us when we have children in the future. I should say, if anybody here is spying for my mum, that's far, far, far. But far into the future, if we have children, God help the person who has to try to attempt to figure out what exactly that person's racial identity is and whether or not that's important. But the point being is that it's completely fluid and really quite unrestricted. And so I was thinking some of those here will be I've heard from Europe. And by the way, for those who are in Glasgow for your first time, be it from the rest of the UK or from Europe, usually it's about 35 degrees at this time of year. We're just having one of our off days at the moment. So, usually, this is a tan I've got. That's great. If I can't make that a joke here, where else? Make it. I was thinking about the European continent, and what worries me about the European continent, and in some respects where we are here in the UK as well, is that actually we're starting to move away from concepts that I've always admired when it came to identity. These principles, fundamental principles like multiculturalism. To me, that's I'm a great advocate of multiculturalism and everything it stands for. But what worries me in the European continent and here in the UK, excuse me, I'm a water here. UK is that we're moving away and we're distancing ourselves from these really, really important concepts. I mean, it was November 2010. I don't know if we have anybody from Germany here, but November 2010. I remember very clearly Angela Merkel, standing, addressing her party colleagues, and she was saying that multiculturalism had utterly failed in Germany. And so many of us, and I think many of you here, thinking to yourself, well, it's quite funny that she didn't mention the failure of multiculturalism just a few months earlier. Just a few months earlier, of course, her nation's football team came third in the World Cup. That was the football team, of course, that was made up of a part Ghanaian defender, 2 Polish strikers, and a midfield maestro of Turkish origin. And all of us are thinking, well, where was the failure of multiculturalism then? And so it's very easy to beat people down and move, and I think what's dangerous is that parts of Europe, some elements in the UK are starting to move away from actually embracing what is this intersectional identity, be it faith, be it religion, be it sexual orientation. It's starting to put people back into those individual silos and almost ghettoising where we were, be it across those variants of identity characteristics. And I think that actually is an aggression rather than a progression. Now, I'm a member of the SNP, the Scottish National Party. It's almost built within my frame to look at Scotland through rose-tinted glasses, but I don't. I mean, we have our problems and our difficulties, and Patrick was right to touch upon, it's still a bizarre failure, a centuries-old failure that we have in terms of tackling the sectarian issue, and although we disagree on perhaps parts and legislation on how to move forward with it, we're absolutely agreed that it is a vital blight in our communities, and it's a shame that we've still been fighting over this for centuries and centuries to come. However, in other respects, I think we're doing very well. And for me, it's a source of great pride that it's the Scottish Government and this Scottish Government that's pushing forward legislation consulting on equality in marriage, regardless of what your sexual orientation is. That's a discussion that we should be having. I personally hope the government sticks to what its initial personal view was at the time. And absolutely think that Scotland is probably leading Europe and certainly leading the rest of the UK in this respect. But still plenty more to do. Legislation is not the answer to everything. Legislation is not going to necessarily cure what's happening in terms of the mindset people have in the football terraces when it comes to LGBT issues, when it comes to sexual orientation. It's amazing how the rest of the world has moved on, but football terraces up and down the country are still somehow bastions of heterosexuality. There's clearly something there that has to be done in terms of transformational nature rather than perhaps with legislation, but it can play a useful role, I think, in that. And so you're going to be talking about intersectional identity, how different identity characteristics do interact with each other. And it's an interesting discussion because there's many more factors you have to take into consideration. This week I was launching something called the Ethnic Survivors Forum, and it was a forum for those from the BME community, adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. There's so many more issues that had to be dealt with. Now, anybody who has to deal with sexual abuse as a child will have to go through a range of difficult issues and difficult barriers and obstacles, but perhaps even more exacerbated depending on the faith group or the racial group that you may come from, the racial identity you might have. And it's the same with LGBT issues, I think, as well. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but for those that are feeling the pressure, be it feelings of isolation, feelings of degradation, feelings of that society and their family are pushing pressure that the society and family are putting on them. Now, imagine you come from a faith or from a culture where that is, forbidden or actively discriminated against, and you're talking about not just the pressure of your immediate family, but you're talking about pressures perhaps of an extended family, of an extended community network. I mean, Glasgow is ridiculous. Being an Asian in Glasgow, it's basically like being in an episode of EastEnders. Everybody basically watches what you're doing. Everybody knows it's a joke that there's only 2 degrees of separation, and literally there's only 2 degrees of separation. Everybody knows everybody. And now that has its benefits. In a lot of circumstances it has its benefits. But also imagine what the pressure must be like if you're having to make a difficult decision. Whether you're Asian or whether you're from the BME community or not, you would still face barriers and difficulties. But how does that play with the other identity that you have? And that's some of the interesting things I think you will be discussing. And I'm sorry I can't be with you till the end of that discussion. So, all of us have got an important role to play, be we members of civic society, be we members of local government, be we politicians on a national governmental level, legislators, whoever, we all have an important role to see how these different identities do interact with each other. And even though I won't be staying till the end, I'll be certainly making sure I get a preview of your work and your discussions in that as well. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for bearing with me through the fact that I came late as well. And if I can ever be of any help or any assistance to you, I'm happy to leave my contact details and be in touch. Thank you very much.